Our first session this afternoon is a panel discussion on investment perspectives in the rapidly growing EV sector. And leading this discussion, let's welcome your moderator, Ahmed Abbas, the Director of Strategy and Transactions, Project Finance and Infrastructure Advisory at EY. A very warm welcome. And now let's welcome our panel. First up, we have Muammar al-Rukhaimi, who is the CEO of Etisalat Services Holding by E&. A very warm welcome to you. And now please welcome Jonathan Keys, Senior Manager of Sustainable Finance at HSBC. He is our next panelist. A very warm welcome. And now rounding out our panel is Stewart McKee, who is the Managing Director of Ventum Associates. A very warm welcome. Ahmed, it is now over to you. Yes, please do try and sit in alignment with your images. Thank you so much.
Hi. Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be back again to EVIS this year, and pleased to be among the esteemed panelists. So I believe you have spent a couple of interesting days hearing about EVs, hearing about charging infrastructure, but then remains one important question: who is going to invest to provide the charging infrastructure to help us to do this wide rollout? So we have seen some interesting, I would say, movement, interesting growth into the UAE market as a pioneer market. But still, it requires more and more investments, and this is the core of this session. So we'll cover a few subjects. We'll cover investment perspectives in the rapidly growing EV sector. We'll cover insights from diverse stakeholders. So we have a CPO and an investor, Mr. Muammar, with us. We have HSBC as a lender and a financer and a pioneer in sustainable finance, and we have Stewart as a consultant as well. So may I start by asking each of you to introduce yourselves, starting by Muammar, please.
Muammar Rukhaimi, CEO of Etisalat Service Holding. Etisalat Service Holding is a holding company with 8 entities. We have the Academy, Etisalat Academy. We have a company called Tamdeed, our infrastructure company, where we built the mobile network, the fiber network. It's a system integration company. We have a facility management company. We have a SIM card manufacturing company. We have a data clearing and financial clearing company. And we have what used to be the Yellow Pages. It's dying now. And we have a company called eMind, is our outsourcing company, where we have more than 8,000 employees. So I have a huge portfolio of companies. And our last company that was introduced last October is Charge and Go, that we will be talking about it today.
Thank you very much. I believe most of you knew Etisalat as a telecom operator, a major one, but it's very interesting to see the diversified portfolio, and especially, I would say, investing into upcoming technologies which are growing into the market. So definitely we need you, we need your network, we need your reach as well as knowledge. So if you allow me to move to Jonathan, could you please introduce yourself?
Hi everyone, good to be here again, second year at EVIS, great to come back. Yep, Jonathan Keys from HSBC, probably needs very little introduction, but a very large international bank with very much a local presence. Really looking at sustainable finance for local and international organizations, looking at how we can use our regional expertise and our regional network to bring technology into the UAE, into the region, and also vice versa. So happy to be here, and thank you.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. It's a pleasure to have you back again. And last but not least, Stewart, could you please introduce yourself? I saw some interesting OEMs that you have been working with as well, so I think it's nice for our audience to understand.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Stewart McKee. I'm Managing Director of the e-mobility division of Ventum Associates. We're a growth company. We're based in Dubai. We're also based in London, where I come from. And we have affiliates in Hong Kong and Australia and also in the US. In my recent past, I've been involved with electric vehicle charging infrastructure for 12 years now. I've spent 3 years with Switch, which is an advanced management platform for EV charging infrastructure using all the latest technologies. We've just sold out to, or been acquired partly by ABB. Prior to that, I created Electric Village, which is solving the problem that apartment residents have with charging their vehicles, and also the problem that landlords have in getting residents to pay for charging their vehicles. So we funded 500,000 apartments across the UK. And to that I had a spell with Wallbox, Barcelona-based manufacturer that reverse IPO'd some years ago. And fundamentally, I come from the motor industry, Nissan and Mitsubishi. That's.
Thank you very much. So if we can go back to Mr. Muammar, and we would like to ask you about your recent initiative, which was announced at GITEX. So Etisalat announced the strategic initiative to electrify its fleet, and this is voluntarily. So can you please elaborate on your strategic objectives and implementation plan to our audience?
During COP28, Etisalat announced that they are committed to reaching net zero by 2030. And we already started onboarding, or we already onboarded 100 vehicles, EV vehicles, into our fleet. And we will gradually transform all our fleet to an electrical fleet. This also comes with a challenge, where we will charge. So with every challenge, there is an opportunity. Before attempting to go for electrical vehicles, furthermore, the main issue is finding a location to charge them. Individual living in villas, they can install their own chargers, but fleet operators and individual living in apartments, where they will charge. And this is the idea where we came with Charge and Go. Charge and Go is not only an EV charging solution, it's a holistic solution where we will do the installation, operation, maintenance, the after-sales support, the billing and charging, and customer care. So far, we have launched the company. We are live, and we have a roadmap. We have an offering for B2B. We have an offering for B2C. And our roadmap that we will install by end of next year, almost 1,000 chargers. However, we have another roadmap when it comes to mobility, roaming and mobility. Today, there are different charge point operators in UAE, and more to come. This by itself is a challenge for the end user. How many accounts that you will have, how you can charge in different charging point operator with your same account, where we have a company called EDCH, where its bread and butter is roaming. Okay. At one point of time, you will be able to roam with one account over all the CPOs, whether you are in UAE or outside UAE. You will have national roaming, then you will have international roaming.
I think this is very interesting. So the whole initiative came up as an in-house initiative. It moves out to a nationwide initiative, and then you are capitalizing on your wide network. Etisalat is one of, I think, widest networks which are covering across all of UAE. And if there is a CBO which is able to help the country to develop its infrastructure, then Etisalat is definitely well positioned to do so. So this is a great opportunity, but then it requires a wider investment. So if I can move to Jonathan Keys, and can I ask you, Johnson, about the role of HSBC as well in sustainable finance, and specifically when it comes to mobility charging infrastructure and different solutions as well, and what have you been doing in the region so far?
Sure. So HSBC obviously, I think, was very active in the market. We were the first to actually offer EV loans in the UAE, so we saw the potential. Obviously, it's been a bit challenging with interest rates in the region to try and keep that up, but it's good to see momentum. A lot of the local banks have then adopted that, so it was good to spur the market. Unfortunately, there's been a bit of a issue with premiums going up and insurance on EVs becoming a challenge and having some headwind in the market, but still seeing good progress. One of the best ways that HSBC has been financing and supporting the region, obviously using our big trade finance, trade footprint, a lot of importing of vehicles in the region, Al Salam, limousines, converting their fleet. So as these big institutions, either public sector or private sector, look for fleet conversion, HSBC has been very active. So that's playing onto our strengths. But also locally, at the smaller scale, we've been helping new economy guys, such like Shift EV in Egypt with the last mile conversion vehicles, very much looking at that niche market and very much helping build out the local market. And then really one of the things that I would say that is helpful in this space is when organizations have, we're all in the sustainability field in this region. That's why we're all here eventually. plus the money making, of course. But having a strategy, having that publicly announced to the market, it doesn't have to be too complicated, really helps access to finance with banks when talking to investors and looking at the investment side. So having just a clear statement is really important for organizations. And, banks do look at this. It's one of the criteria for green finance, why is the company doing this? And I think a lot of small organizations miss that they struggle to have access to capital. Certainly in the growth stages, they won't get capital from banks typically. But if you can, show that progress, show that story, show that initiative as to why you're in this space, it actually will help eventually when, traditional financing comes along. So that's one thing, a bit of advice that I would say from the financing side.
No, thank you very much. So as Muammar was saying, they started by an in-house initiative for them, but they need investment across the supply chain and across the whole value chain as well. So HSBC provides sustainable finance across the value chain, from transformation of the fleet, charging infrastructure, as well as adopting new technologies, which are all a part of the wider.
Yeah, so our strategies for sustainable finance are looking at 3 sectors. So obviously decarbonizing supply chains being a huge one. So looking at the supply chain, how can we finance better supply chains for, more resilient as well? And there's really interesting pieces of work where more sustainable supply chains are actually more resilient. Post-COVID, that was a really interesting piece of work, that making them more sustainable has the resilience factor as well. So we're big into decarbonizing supply chains, and one of our other pillars is very much in the new economy, building from the ground up. Banks traditionally not very good at financing startups, so we're starting to look at that with venture debt and venture equity, and looking at really innovative technologies where there's promise. And again, when you can demonstrate that growth potential, that growth story, it's really helpful. So we're trying very much, but not a space in the new economy that banks particularly do well at in the past, so everyone's coming up to speed.
Thank you very much. So if I can move to Stewart. And Stewart, we heard about innovative companies, we heard about innovative financiers. So from your global experience, what can we do in the Middle East actually to support and enable the growth of EVs beyond providing the financing and beyond having innovative companies?
Okay. Well, hindsight is an amazing thing. And I think the region should take full advantage of hindsight, given that well, look, it pays no one to be first in some situations. And the European Union, the US, have all moved very quickly. They've been engaging in EV adoption and infrastructure for around 12 years now. And they've achieved greatness, but they've also taken a few wrong turns. And I believe this is where this region should start from. There's a bit of a tipping point at the moment, technology terms. So we're arriving at a situation where we've kind of come to the end of the road of a set of protocols, if you like, that allow the car and the charger and the end user to communicate. And they've kind of reached their limits in Europe. And I won't go into details about the protocols, but believe me, the next generation of protocols allows so much more to happen in charging networks. And this is where I believe this region should begin its journey. And I'll talk a little bit about some of the features, because this is going to affect everything from the end user experience all the way back to the willingness of investors to get involved in networks. And simple things like plug and charge. Now, plug and charge is a seamless authentication or payment that takes place between the vehicle and the charger, so the driver's not involved at all. And Tesla drivers have been doing this right the way back. But what's possible now is that every single brand of car and every single brand of charger can communicate seamlessly in this way. This plug and charge is supported by the 2.0 of protocols. And again, once networks are supporting this, they're able to support plug and charge. Another example is bidirectionality, which has been a bit of a dream of the European Union for many years, but believe me, it's becoming a reality. Not particularly in networks, but certainly in places where the dwell time is longer and the charging time is longer. And this is obviously enabling the EV owner to generate a revenue from its own vehicle and also support the grid. Cybersecurity is massively enhanced with the new protocols. And I mean, in Europe today, the majority of networks, there's no security. It's just crazy. I mean, a teenager with a mobile phone can hack into a charger anywhere. Now, you fast forward to the point when there's billions of dollars of transactions going through these chargers. That's a crazy world where hackers are just going to, you know, take great delight. So we need stronger cybersecurity. We also need much more advanced maintenance information in real time from the chargers. All this is now available. So we can have 100% charger uptime. And as you probably know, chargers that break kill networks. So, because customers never go back to broken chargers. But another upside of this is basically you've got a lot more knowledge about what's going on in the charging process. And I noticed, so my colleague, friend to the right at Etisalat, and the Charge and Go, emergence of the Charge and Go network. And this is fascinating because this is a mobile telephone services provider, right? They know how to grow networks, and they know how to bundle together an end-user proposition. So basically, they're starting from what the end-user wants and working back into the technology. It's exactly the right way to do it. What most people have done so far is started with the technology and found something for it to do in the marketplace. And these are things that the mobile telephone companies know very, very well. I've been working with BT in the UK on a similar rollout of all 50-odd thousand charging points in the UK. I'm very excited to see what Etisalat does with this opportunity, and I'm pretty sure it will be one of the most competitive networks.
This needs a project.
And just to jump on top of that, I think the UAE is very well placed to do the bi-directionality with the housing communities that we have. We have nice little pilot projects where we could, use them very well. We have lots of homes. It's not flat, so we have the option for, premise to premise. And also, absolutely, that integration across the value chain and working almost in hubs, replicating what oil and gas have done, co-locating refineries with chemical plants and carbon capture together all in one place, similar to how airports are trying to generate SAF at the airport. Using the same sort of methodology, looking for those synergies, I think is something that we really need to learn from. As well, not to skip over the subsidies. We've seen subsidies being rolled back around the world, and I think there's still definitely a need for them to help spur them on. And linking back to the financing side, the way banks, the way insurers value a car loan, value a car needs to be completely built from the ground up for an EV versus a traditional car. We're still pricing cars, EVs, as if they were traditional cars, ICE engines. So I think that's really something that the industry as a whole needs to look at from the credit side. And they're two completely different vehicles in a sense, in the way that they operate, the way they have revenue potential, the way that they have maintenance fees. All that needs to be reevaluated from the financing side as well.
Yeah, I can't agree more really, and I would like to give Muammar the stage as well to talk about some of the both benefits that you both have mentioned for someone like Etisalat to come into this sector. So we talked about cybersecurity, so you're already a network operator. We talked about coverage, you already have towers across the whole country. And the most important as well for me is, are we going to see the first roaming chargers across the nation that can move actually to the rest of the GCC?
This is already happening in Europe. We're not starting something new. It's already happening in Europe. So we need to implement this with a lot
in the Middle East.
In the Middle East for sure. Number one. Number two, Etisalat is a SOC operator, so we do network security is in our DNA because we come from a mobility background. For sure, we need to invest more when it comes to security on the charging network. But this is in the heart of what we do. We come from telecom background. We understand networks. We plan not for today. We plan 10 or 15 or 20 years ahead what will happen. My advice to building owners, you need to plan ahead. Today, you need to consider in the future at least 20 to 25% of your parking should have EV chargers. This is the future. It's going to happen. It's impossible to have a charger per parking because it will cost a lot. You need to have a list, or you reserve certain parking for charging.
I can't agree more, and I think that's the value of having someone like Etisalat into this field. And if we can go back to Jonathan and talk about the different products which you provide to e-mobility and charging infrastructure, can you tell us more about the green bonds and the green finance? And in this market, what do you see the most popular so far, and how have they been implemented and utilized? Is it charging infrastructure? Is it the supply chain? Is it the EV? Where do you find most demand, and where do you still find most of the issues?
Just quickly on the demand, most of the demand has been in the region has been importing vehicles. Yeah. There hasn't been a whole lot in, financing local production. That's still small scale and it's still coming. So there's a lot of investment still bringing in the technology. In terms of the products, green loans, sustainability-linked loans, green bonds is pretty well understood in the market. They're financing specific activities, and that's pretty well established. What's more interesting is the innovative financing options that are happening, and it's looking at what we were talking about, using sort of the fleet conversion and the big, public sector or employee base to actually link that to financing structures. So there's interesting one where we've done a partnership with Octopus and actually Tata in India, where as part of the employee benefits package, guaranteed financing, zero down payment financing in some instances for an EV for employees. And actually partnering with the Octopus in the UK, using that for then third-party employees, so sort of a subscription plan. So rather than just providing a green loan, which may or may not be a bit more better rates, actually using your employee base, HSBC has 200,000 employees globally, 85,000 in the UK, and instantly you're tapping into sort of artificially propping up demand using that employee base package. That's something that we could really explore here. You've got huge government entities. I think Dubai government entities make up a quarter of the EV market in Dubai alone, in the UAE alone. That's just one government entity creating a huge artificial demand. So mobilizing those big public sector, the big employee bases, you've got huge state-owned entities here with huge number of employees, tapping into that and linking that to a financing option is a really interesting avenue that we should explore here, I think, in the region and the UAE in particular. It's got some good potential.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. If we can move to Stewart as well. So we talked, so Jonathan touched a little bit on suppliers. So from your experience with Mitsubishi and others, so what do you think the suppliers would need actually to come into this market with more products, so we can see the luxury vehicles like Tesla and others, we can see some of the economic models. So working with OEMs, what do you see the key enablers and incentives that can be provided to them to support this market?
Well, look, I mean, overall, there's a really big blocker, and that's the natural growth of networks and real user revenues. These two things haven't really been reached. The reason they're blockers is because if you're bringing a technology to market, you're a supplier to the marketplace of hardware or of software, you've kind of got nowhere to go. Because if there isn't the growth in the network, if customers are promising to install 1,000 chargers, but their plans get delayed because there's no user revenues, then this all washes back and it slows things down. So one of the approaches that Ventum Associates has been working on, and it's becoming a very popular funding conversation, is the creation of asset cos. Now, a few years ago, most investment was going into the technology, and the investment ROI was struggling because there was no real, natural organic growth. With the investment co, the investor's looking at the hardware asset to own it and the location, and that's the key thing. So some of the contracts on locations are 5, 10, maybe 20 years. So this all of a sudden is giving the investor a nice big ROI window at some point. So they're much more confident. And because they own the asset, they may as well deploy it. So all of a sudden there's big network growth. So those 1,000 chargers that were promised are now in the ground. And this is having a knock-on effect to adoption of EVs, because people can see networks. And all of a sudden, it's growing. But that's only going to happen if investors are going to take control of the asset and say, right, please use the asset. So that's one thing we were very cognizant of, and we're working with a number of companies with this. McKinsey did a piece of work just at the back end of last year that basically said capacity utilization of networks needs to hit around 20% before any positive EBITDA is reached. That's a lot. You know, when you've got an EV population in this region of like 0.0001%, you know, this is going to be a real struggle. So the formation of the asset co is, I think, it's going to unblock a lot of this commercial organic growth. The other big commercial opportunity, believe it or not, is home charging. And everybody's always recognized that home charging is anywhere between 60 and 80% of the charging events. Most people will use their own electricity on their own driveway or in their own apartment building if they can. They sleep there overnight, the car charges at its lowest possible cost. The problem for businesses is, well, you know, how do you leverage commercial gain out of a relationship a private individual is having with his private electricity on his private driveway? And that's always been a, you know, impossible one to crack. But I mentioned those protocols earlier. They allow bidirectionality. And what this is going to do, and already 3 car makers have moved on this, is allow homeowners to access cheap electricity from the grid at night, store it in the car, feed it into their home, and back again. This bidirectionality. But it can only be managed through a digital platform, which is owned by a mobile services company, or an automotive company, or an electricity company. And in Geneva Motor Show this year, Renault came out and said, we're going to provide our customers with service as a subscription. So the customers are now paying 10 or 15 euros a month to access this economy, which is driven through bidirectionality. And all of a sudden, Renault has a digital connection with its customer and is charging a subscription service. It's exactly how you commercialize this relationship. I know from my own experience, I've worked with Lucid, I've worked with Nissan, I've worked with Hyundai. They're all moving in this direction, basically. So in terms of supplying to the marketplace, AC home chargers are going to be a phenomenal enterprise because they're going to provide bidirectionality. And you know, the basic app that is controlling this is going to collect a subscription off homeowners. So two big things are going to happen.
Yeah.
Can I just
Please
ask,
go ahead, Jonathan.
what about on the flip side, instead of, you know, charging at home, charging at work, and then taking that and then plugging back into your house to charge it? So almost taking it from the employer instead of the home, yeah? I
mean, it could work that way. It's more likely that the homeowner has a much lower tariff. I mean, in the UK, your nighttime home tariff is a quarter of your daytime full tariff. But it's quite likely you might drive to the office and your employer might say, can we have some of your cheap electricity, please? We'd like to run the air conditioning. And there's some quid pro quo organized between,
And then vice versa, you charge your home from the car battery. Yeah.
I mean, we did a piece of work with Hertz. This is public knowledge, by the way. I'm not disclosing any, you know, sensitive information here. And they are looking at, obviously, an electric vehicle fleet that goes to hire, and considering this opportunity that the vehicle goes to the customer with a completely fully charged battery at a very low cost energy, and they then use that in their home. So you're kind of adding a premium to the car hire situation. So this bidirectionality is, it's got hidden depths. Happy to go into a lot more detail at another moment. You have to come and see us at Ventum.
Yeah, just one question from my end. So did this include solar as well?
Say again, sorry.
Did this include solar energy as well and renewables, or not yet?
It does. I mean, there's a few myths about solar. It's an effective way of collecting energy and putting it into your car battery through your home charger. Yeah. But in actual fact, it's a fairly small proportion of the, you know, solar isn't that great. It may be contributing 5 to 10% of the electricity you need. You know, it kind of drips in. But, you know, if you have, for example, you have a large desert space and you have a massive solar park and you have a recharging station on a highway, yeah, that works.
Yeah, because one of the trends in the Middle East region is that we have a lot of space, as you said, especially on the roofs. And we can see that solar roofs are moving, especially in charging infrastructure, to be one of the main sources of energy. I think the key obstacle in some states that they weren't allowed to sell electricity or to charge back to the network, but now with the regulations being opened up, with the whole renewable, with the whole solar roofs, and with the whole technology coming in, I think this is becoming very different. So most probably you can see Etisalat as well as not a charging infrastructure, but a seller of electricity as well. So this is the future. So as we are coming to the end of our session, so I would like a few words from each of you. So how do you see the future of Charge and Go and Etisalat into this field, especially at one key point as well, that you have additionally to what we mentioned earlier, the experience of packaging your offers to the clients and being able to reach the clients wherever they are?
First of all, it will not stop at charging cars. There are more and more things are going to come, like last mile delivery, where we'll have a battery swap stations. This is one of the things that is happening, at least in Far East. Bundling is in our DNA. We will be bundling this with our services. We want to bundle this with every new car sold in the country, where we will bundle charging as a service. So the roadmap is rich with so many things. Digital signage, for example, on our chargers and our app.
Amazing monetization as well.
So the future is great. Again, if you solve the last mile, the range anxiety, you will bring more customers on board. This is going to happen. It's happening soon.
I can't agree more. I think the battery cost as well as the range is getting better and better by time. And this is one of the things which Tesla is facing now, because BYD is becoming as a very strong competitor and taking over Tesla in some areas. Because basically the battery is becoming cheaper, the range is becoming more and more, so you don't have the obstacles in the price which were there before. So thank you very much. That has been very comprehensive. It's great to see that Etisalat, an innovator coming from the home ground of UAE into this area. If I can move to Jonathan as well, a few words from your end, Jonathan, and what are you looking forward to see into your customers, into the growing areas, and what's the future plan for HSBC in this area?
Sure, I think there's a few aspects that really need a few sort of systemic unblockers. So, decentralizing and opening up that renewable energy access on villas and homeowners, so that they have the ability to tap into that market, which will then set up the grid connectivity. Decentralizing and unifying the policy across Emirates. We want one unified policy for the UAE, not different municipalities, different Emirates approaching it in different ways. So we need to make sure we avoid fragmentation. And then really the integration across services, I think, is really interesting. And then the financing in the innovative ways will really tap in to sort of support all of that. I think they're sort of the main ones, yeah.
Thank you very much. And last but not least, Stewart, so what are, I would believe, the key takeaways from different regions in terms of incentivizing the customer and supporting growth? And what are your keywords for this region specifically from what you have seen abroad?
I'd like to see a lot more emphasis on the end user proposition.
Energy proposition, okay.
We've had a great deal of emphasis on the technology so far and all the challenges that the technologists face. Well, just park those, because generally technologists overcome challenges anyway. The real issue is you've got to make the tide rise across a number of areas of the business. It's got to rise all at the same time. And this is why Ventum exists. Okay, we're not just a traditional introduction agency to investors, because investors, the first thing they do is they look at the valuation of the company, and that valuation is always based on commercial traction. So we develop as much the commercial side of an organization as we do the funding side, because ultimately they're kind of one of the same thing. What we haven't seen so far is enough focus on the end user proposition and the commercial end of, if you like, pulling this technology through the marketplace. That's what I'd like to see a lot more of, and that's basically why I work at Ventum.
I think this is very valid as well, and thank you very much. So I would like to thank our esteemed panelists and open the floor just for a few questions. Are there any questions to our panelists? Okay, so it seems we have, get the mic here, please.
Hi, my name is Saleh Jafar. I am the CEO of ESGMENA.com, the first and only environment, social, and governance knowledge hub in the MENA region, and an EV journalist. What is your relationship when it comes to OEMs and dealers? That's very important, that we will be having an influx of EVs coming to UAE in the foreseeable future.
Who would like to take this question? Is your question directed to a specific person, or would you like someone to volunteer?
Any.
Anyone would like to take this question? Please, the mic here.
General.
We would like to work closely with the OEMs because we would like to bundle the charging facility with every car that is being sold. You see, Tesla sells the car with free charging network right now, but other EV manufacturers, they don't have the same privilege. So we want to give them this privilege where they have, or they can bundle every car with a network of chargers.
One thing I'll add that's also causing issues on the insurance side is, and pushing up premiums, is a lot of the EV maintenance and work has to be done at the dealership. So opening that up to other workshops will really reduce sort of the cost and the availability of parts and things like that, which are causing issues on the insurance side. So I think, opening the market up, making it much more of a free market, is certainly something that needs to act as an unblocker.
Yeah, and I think I can add as well from personal experience. So I supported the government of Abu Dhabi, the DOT, for a couple of years to implement the Green Vehicles program. And one of the first things we did at that point was to establish a stakeholder committee for the OEMs, where all of the representatives from the OEMs, they came in, they said, okay, these are our key obstacles to get into this market, these are the key barriers. How can you help us to get there? We have the vehicles are ready, and we are happy to get into this market, but we needed to see a few things, including the gross, the vehicles, the gross of the market, the suppliers' demand, including as well that we have the charging infrastructure. So I was having a very interesting conversation with one of the major OEMs, and they said that we haven't been into Saudi Arabia yet because we don't see the charging infrastructure to the state which we can actually start to have the vehicles, despite that there is a very strong demand on the vehicles. So there are different obstacles, different barriers for the OEMs, and definitely wherever you are, a government side, private sector, a financier, a lender, a charging infrastructure, you should work closely with the OEMs from my perspective. Please go on.
Thank you, Ahmed. It has been a very nice panel. Thank you, panelists. I'm George from Emirates Mobility. I'm business director. Actually, countries like UAE and GCC, they will be facing lots of offerings. So if, let's take, for example, Abu Dhabi, ADNOC has his own charging network. There is private companies like Green Parking. They are managing parkings in Abu Dhabi. They have their own network. And now your esteemed Etisalat will package it per the data they have for their customers and benefit from or optimize their customer service. Financing at HSBC, there is also another plan that might be coming from now. The parkings, the public parkings, they have their own partners. So as a user, I'm ending up with multiple platforms, so defragmentation is against smart mobility and mobility as a service. How you will deal, or how the government will deal with this? Thank you.
I think you didn't attend at the beginning. We were talking about roaming between chargers. So you will end up having one account and you can roam on all of these chargers. So roaming agreements will happen between charge point operators, not only national roaming, even international roaming. So charge point operators in Oman, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Kuwait, whoever in the region, they will have to sign agreements where with one account you can roam, like you do with your mobile network today. With one account you can roam all over the globe, you will have the same when it comes to charge point operators. With one account, you will be able to roam between charging points.
Yeah,
As prices will differ, similar to the roaming now. The prices, if I go direct, is different from using a roaming package. Yes. Prices-wise, for consumer pricing, it will differ going directly than taking a roaming package.
It's too early to say, but at the end it will end up like what you have today in mobility and telecom mobility, where the prices of roaming is almost the prices of what you will get from a local entity. This will regulate by itself by time.
And I can add more as well. So prices are always controlled by demand and supply. So you find today in Dubai or in Abu Dhabi, there is a huge demand on the charging infrastructure, because it's not enough for the growth of the electric vehicles. The queuing time is very long. So people can, or the charging infrastructure, the CPOs, they can increase their vehicles and increase, the charging tariffs. But I think the most important is that what the government has done is unifying the plug outs. And this is not just in the Middle East. So the plugs of the charging infrastructures are all becoming unified in the Middle East and globally to allow roaming, to allow integrated networks. And sooner or later, you'll find the government will have a dashboard or a network, even if this is a private sector, but it will be the benefit of the government to see how much is the demand. Because if demand is spiking into certain areas, these areas should have more charging infrastructure, which will normally and organically, I would say, equalizes the tariffs. Tariffs are always there and always controlled by supply and demand. It's a free market everywhere.
Yeah, hi, my name is Hani and I'm just an EV driver, EV owner, like the typical user. My question is for Mr. Muammar. When can I buy a home charger from Etisalat, same as I buy a router? So, and I get electricity, same I get data in the home. All have a challenge for charging at home, especially if you're actually living in a tower. So
it's a TV package with internet and the home charger as well.
You see what will happen soon. What will happen, building owners, the developers today, they are having a huge issue where the individuals of apartments, they want to charge. They need to have somewhere to charge overnight. What we are offering, we go to the building owners or the developers, we go and invest. We take a certain number of chargers, and this number will keep on changing depending on the number of cars in the building. And there will be a common area for charging. We have the platform to do billing and charging. We have the app. We pay at the end of each month the power utilization. We solve the headache of the building owners and the developers. So this is happening today. I don't know in which developer you're working with, but we can approach them and solve this for you for sure.
And that includes buildings that don't have chargers already installed? You're working with installation as well?
Yes, yes. It's going to happen.
There's a lot of old buildings, yeah.
Our priority right now is where, first of all, the fast DC chargers. We need to have a footprint all over UAE, number one. Number two, at one point of time, we will go to each building like we have done in the mobile network. We started with the macro sites where we covered the entire country. However, you need to go for densification where you will add chargers. This is a huge project. This is years to come. We're talking about thousands of chargers, thousands.
I think we can have one more question, but because of the time, we'll cut off afterwards.
Sure.
So please go ahead.
Hi, this is Asha Pawar. I'm the transportation manager from Astar City. I have a question for the Etisalat services, because since you guys are leading as a mobility, into the mobility sector now, let's say if we have resolved all the electric charging solutions and infrastructure problems, everything. Just one question as an end user, nobody is talking about the battery, once, because the battery life, normally over here, the manufacturers are providing 8 years, or maybe it can go up to maximum if we stretch also is 9 years. So how we are going to the batteries needs to be decomposed of, and it's a huge materials which are going into, because currently it's only the lithium. So do you really think that electric vehicles are the future, or it's just a transition? Thank you.
The development in batteries are changing as we speak. At one point of time, I think lithium battery will die, and we will have something called supercapacitors, where in order to charge, you will go to a neighboring supercapacitor. It will take seconds to upload, because it's a capacitor, it's not a battery. So the battery, as we know it today, will change in the future. And we are testing some of this technology, but at the end, it needs to be adopted by the OEMs.
I think as well we are seeing a lot of developments already on the battery. So if you're talking about passenger vehicle, as Muammar has said, there is a lot of developments. But if you're talking about trucks, normal battery now is an obstacle for the truck growth, and it's being developed very strongly, very heavily, to be able to hit the market as soon as possible. And then Muammar mentioned across this conversation as well on the swap stations. And this is a whole revolution into Southeast Asia, where you have in Thailand, in China, in Malaysia, and this is now driving the whole two-wheeler sector and the transformation of the fleet there. So it's already happening. You can see it as well into the price of the battery itself, which is getting lower and lower, which means the technology is getting there. It's very similar to the mobiles. So mobiles used to be very expensive in the 90s, and then they become more commoditized and more I would say, diversity and more offerings as we move forward. Thank you very much. So can we get a round of applause to our esteemed panelists, and thank you very much for joining us today. Thank you very much.
Thank you.